Yo, Louie T, welcome to this Louie T Network exclusive, this mini-series that I've been working on, been looking to put this out for quite some time. Feel like now's the perfect time. You know, covering each and every single episode of the Commander's Log and giving you a react to those videos. We've had 4 episodes to this point. They've been amazing, all 4 of them. We're going to get a 5th, whether it's next week or the week thereafter. We've already seen the preview for it, so we know it's coming. It's been a fantastic series, and really, honestly, since Julie Donaldson has taken over Senior VP of Media and Content, everything has gotten better. The quality of videos, they're in 4K. The audio has gotten exponentially better. You can actually hear what's being said. It's not choppy. It's not being broken up. It's clear. It's concise. The amount of content coming out from the command center to the one-on-one sit-down interviews to this Commander's Log, everything has just been spectacular, honestly speaking, and Julie Donaldson deserves a ton of credit for that. They did this Commander's Log last year. It just wasn't as appealing to me last year. You know, it was something to consume, but it wasn't as good as it has been this year. And I think this year's episodes really have a larger point to them, which I'm going to give you my biggest takeaway from each of those episodes, and why, when you put all of this together, I think it leads to us potentially winning in 2023 and maybe even moving forward. So let's talk about the first episode. And the first episode really centered around going back to Week 18 versus Dallas in 2022 to wrap up that season. They win that game. You see them immediately thereafter in the locker room. They sing happy birthday to Ron. They also show the Sam Howell victory speech that he gave to the team. And then Ron has them meeting in the meeting room the next day, telling them, hey, everything that we want is in front of us. You know, we fell short this year. That's on us, but we're going to be better next year. And it starts with you guys doing the things you need to do, getting yourself ready for 2023. All of that starts right now. And then you see the exit interviews. You see the players cleaning out their lockers. They're talking about the team aspect, how they love each other, how, you know, they battled, but they just fell short, that they're young, but they're coming, they're hungry, they want it. And you get all of these things that you see. Then they sit down, a lot of the core players, Terry McLaurin and Jonathan Allen, and I think they sat down Chase Young and Benjamin St. Juice, and they sat down All-Pro Revo, all right, Jeremy Reeves, and they talked to these guys and asked them how they felt about the season. They asked them a number of questions. You know, what do they feel about the team? How would you describe the season in a word? Those types of things. You know, even asked them about the fans, you know, and how they feel about them. And so they answered those questions, and listening to those responses, to me, I think Jahan was in it as well. Listening to those responses was so refreshing, because it reminded me of some things that I think I can use as a springboard for this team's success. So it spoke to me in particular as a fan because of my fandom elsewhere. All of the teams that I root for the most part, are young, and they're going through this same process, or have been through this same process that Washington is going through currently. And if the trajectory of those teams is any indication of what's to come for Washington, then we're in for some fun, okay? So I'm an Atlanta Braves fan. The Atlanta Braves won the World Series 2 seasons ago, right? They were the baby Braves just 4 years ago, right? Baby Braves, okay? Young team, energetic, didn't know up from down, left from right. They just knew they were out playing baseball and having fun. We arrived at the party a year earlier than anybody thought we were going to. We got swept by the Dodgers, but it was that experience. They gained experience. They learned how to win. They learned how to play big-time baseball. They brought that to the show the next year. They made it all the way to the NLCS, got eliminated by the Dodgers again, okay? So they had this team in their way, and then they finally were able to clear that hurdle 2 years ago, beat the Dodgers in the NLCS, got all the way to the World Series, and beat the beat the Astros and won the World Series. All right, young baseball team, and they're going to be young for many more years to come. Okay, and they're going to be exciting, and they're going to win a lot more. But that's a young team, right? The togetherness. I watched them grow from babies, right, little pups, to now they're big dogs. All right, they still young, but they big dogs, and they bite. They don't just bark, they bite. Memphis Grizzlies. I'm a Memphis Grizzlies fan. Young team, right? Watch them come up from one of the worst teams in the NBA to now one of the youngest, but also most exciting. And there's a championship window. Now, Ja Morant's got to get his act together, and I don't know if that's going to happen or not. However, that doesn't change the fact that this is a well-built roster. They're young, they're hungry, they're talented, and they're going to be around for a while, right? So it leads me to Washington. This is a young football team. Now, they're not the youngest in the NFL. We've talked about this. I think someone said we're the 12th youngest team in the league, but we're still damn young. This is a very young team. We went through the exercise. There are only 8 players on the roster that are 30 years or older on this roster. You know, not a very old team, okay? Very young football team. But what I saw in this first episode is the youth, but also togetherness, all right? This is a group that plays for one another, that looks over at the guy next to him and says, man, I love that dude. I don't want to let him down, right? How often is it that we hear them show up for camp and they're asked, hey, what made you want to be here? What made you decide to show up? You've got a contract situation. Cam Curl is a great example of that. You got a contract that you're disputing. You want a new deal. Why are you here? Because I love my brothers. I like being here with my bros, right? Montez Sweat comes back and he says, the biggest difference between me working out away from the facility and working here is my guys. I love my bros, man. I love being around them. I love the company of my boys, man. I love these dudes. There's a togetherness. Every team is not like this. I just hope you understand that. Every team does not get along the way that this team gets along. At the beginning of that episode, Terry McLaurin says, this is the most together team I've ever been on in my career. All right? He's like, these dudes love each other. You know, and you're hearing other players. Brian Robinson said the same thing, that the togetherness in this locker room is different, right? And the core group of guys are still here. You know, the vast majority of the guys that they're referring to in the locker room, I think one of the guys that we're going to miss from a locker room perspective, you know, J.D. McKissick, obviously, but Cam Sims is another guy that I thought was huge in the locker room. You know, a Bama guy, sort of a glue guy. We're going to miss him a little bit, I think. But ultimately, the core group of guys, about 30, 35 of them, are still here from last year, right? So this locker room is together. So you got that youth, you got that togetherness, then you add in, I think, what is a huge component. And I think this is what ultimately swings the pendulum in the favor of the Washington Commanders in the 2023 season, and that's growth. And you hear these guys talk about the growth, and that's something, as a fan of teams that are young, it's so frustrating because the growing pains are tough as a fan. You watch the senseless turnovers, or you watch the poor base running, or you watch the stupid unforced errors, and you go, come on, guys. But that's a part of youth. We watched it with this team the last 2 years, where they can't get out of their own way because they're young and they make dumb mistakes, and it cost us ball games, right? A great example of that last year, John Ridgway hitting the center, right? Cost us an opportunity to beat the Minnesota Vikings, right? That's the difference between going to the playoffs, missing out on that one game, and not going to the playoffs. It's a dumb, youthful mistake. It can't happen, but it did, right? That's a great example of youth, you know, really getting in your way. But it's a part of the growing process, right? It's those growing pains that you must go through as a team. You know, not finding a way to beat the Titans at the end of that game. You got first and goal from the 2-yard line. There is no reason that you shouldn't come out on top in that football, but you have to learn how to win in those situations. And we're learning, okay? We're starting to get better. We got down there again against the Giants, right? These are things that they're going to remember. And they're going to remember that bitter taste that they had after that loss. They're going to remember that Titans game and how dejected they were. And they're going to remember what it took to dig themselves out of that hole, right? They lost that Titans game. They could have buried their head in the sand. We were 1-4 after that loss. The season could have been done. They picked themselves up, and somehow, and it was not pretty, All right. And if they were probably playing any other team in the league, not named Chicago, we probably lose that game. But they found a way to get it done on the road in one of the ugliest victories of the season. Doesn't matter. A dub's a dub. And it turned the season around, right? So that growth, plus togetherness and youth equals something that I think we've been lacking and why we haven't been good here for a very long time. But when you put youth, togetherness, and growth together, you add all of those things up, it equals consistency. Okay? Young players growing who play together leads to consistency, something we've lacked here in Washington for far too long. And I think you're going to start to see that in 2023. Consistency. Now, the quarterback position, it's young. It's going to make mistakes. Obviously, with a guy making his first, full year worth of starts in Sam Howell. But the group around him is good enough. They're talented enough. They're together enough. And more importantly, they've grown enough to be able to help him along as he continues to grow as an individual. This team has grown together as a team. And so a guy like Sam Howell will be drug along by this team who is already ready to win, if you get what I'm saying. And so you hear all these players talk about the same thing. Like, we've learned so much. We're a year smarter. We're a year wiser. We went through a lot of these growing pains. I really, truly believe, and again, as a fan that has watched the Braves come from the baby Braves and getting swept all the way to the World Series, watched the Memphis Grizzlies come from one of the worst teams in basketball to a title contender. As a fan watching that, I'm watching this Washington team and I'm seeing a lot of similarities. And I'm saying we're heading in the right direction. The trajectory is pointing upward. If Sam Howell is what we think he is, if Eric Bieniemy is what we think he is, this team has a chance to win and win big in 2023. I'm not saying win the Super Bowl, but I'm talking about winning enough games to qualify for postseason play and winning a playoff game or two. Like, we have that kind of talent. We have that kind of roster. We have that kind of togetherness and unity. We have the youth. We have the talent. We have the togetherness. We've seen the growth. Now it's about putting it all together and equaling the thing that we've lacked. Consistency. For 17 games, we haven't been consistent. For 16 games, we haven't been consistent. There's a flurry here. There's a stretch there. Consistency. It's what's going to carry this team from 8-1 or 7-10 or 7-9. It's what's going to carry them from being a middling franchise to 11-6, to 10-7, to 12-5 or better. And I see that with this team. I see it. You listen to them. You see what's going on here. And the coaches, Rivera has even said, look, we made mistakes. He knows it. He hasn't come out and owned the mistake of putting, Carson Wentz in against Cleveland, but he knows that's on him. He knows that. And so I think what he acknowledged this offseason is a lot of what's going on here, partially my fault because I've allowed it to go on unchecked, but no longer. I'm getting rid of some dudes. I'm moving some pieces around. I'm bringing in other guys that are going to come in here, take some of this stuff off my plate, and allow me to just kind of oversee everything. And I think you're going to see results this year. And that first episode, I think, was a great snapshot into the future of this football team. When you look, and I've talked about this, the talent, it's increasing in this building. The talent on this roster is getting better, and you're seeing it, and you're seeing the youth grow, right? You're seeing guys like Benjamin St-Juste get a year wiser, smarter, right? You're seeing a lot of these young players come of age. Jahan Dotson's like, yo, I understand now what it's going to take for 17 games. I came out of college. We never played that many games. We never made it to the playoffs. So I can't tell you what a season this long looked like, but I can now. And I can tell you I'll be ready next year. Well, next year is this year. And I'm telling you right now, Jahan Dotson healthy for 17 weeks, playing at the level that we saw him play at last year, that's a scary proposition for defenses if you've already got to deal with Terry McLaurin and you already got to deal with Curtis Samuel. And if De'Ami Brown is able to integrate himself into this offense a little bit more, consistency, remember, a year smarter for De'Ami, a year better for De'Ami, could be a year that is a breakout year for De'Ami, right? I think everything's got a chance to come together. And we finally have a chance to see consistency. That's what I got from episode 1. Stay tuned for the rest of this series as I'll break down each of these Commander Log episodes and tell you what I think is the biggest takeaway from each of them. But that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on this episode of Commander Log Recap. I'll see you guys for the second episode. Have a good one.
LouieTeeNetwork.